This is Daily Homeless News, where tell the stories no one else will. North Carolina. If you think here is a place of stunning natural beauty, booming cities, and a thriving economy, you're not entirely wrong, but you might only be seeing the surface. Polished image of vibrant skylines and southern charm is what North Carolina wants to show you. A side that's not captured in glossy brochures or real estate ads. Let's shatter the illusion together. Let's talk about the real North Carolina, where the truth is raw, harsh, and impossible to ignore. Where thousands of people are fighting a daily battle for survival without a roof over their heads. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's open up a real conversation about what's happening right outside our doors. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another story from the hidden corners of our society where silence becomes the loudest cry for help. Homelessness in North Carolina has escalated into a profound crisis, revealing a stark contrast to the state's image of prosperity and growth. Recent data from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development indicates that as of January 2024, approximately 11,600 individuals in North Carolina were experiencing homelessness on a single night, a 19% increase from the previous year. Notably, the unsheltered population, those living in places not meant for habitation, rose by 31.4%, totaling over 4,500 individuals. This surge is not merely a statistic, it represents thousands of lives disrupted by factors such as housing unaffordability, systemic inequities, and insufficient support systems. The increase in homelessness strains public services, including emergency health care and law enforcement, and impacts educational institutions as more students face instability. Economically, communities bear the burden as public spaces become overwhelmed, and the social fabric of neighborhoods frays, eroding trust between citizens and institutions. Projections suggest that without significant intervention, these numbers will continue to rise. The state's housing inventory gap is expected to widen, with a projected shortfall of over 760,000 units by 2029. This shortage, coupled with anticipated population growth, underscores the urgency for comprehensive strategies to address homelessness. The question remains, what kind of society are we becoming if we allow this trajectory to continue? It's imperative to examine the effectiveness of our current safety nets and consider transformative approaches to ensure that every individual has access to safe and stable housing. The foundation of any solution to homelessness lies in the systems designed to prevent it. In North Carolina, these systems are showing serious cracks. At present, the state faces a shortage of over 207,000 affordable housing units. This housing gap hits low-income families the hardest, particularly those earning less than 30% of the median income. They are most at risk of falling through the cracks, and when they do, there's often no place for them to land. Federal disaster relief and housing grants have been directed to the state, particularly after devastating events like Hurricane Helene in 2024. These funds have been used to construct temporary housing and repair storm-damaged infrastructure. While these efforts are helpful, they're reactive rather than proactive. It's like bailing out water from a sinking ship without patching the hole. On a more progressive note, North Carolina has adopted a client bill of rights for individuals experiencing homelessness, recognizing the dignity and agency of those in crisis. This move applies to 79 counties participating in the balance of state continuum of care. On paper, it's promising. But policy is only as good as its execution. In reality, enforcement is inconsistent, and many experiencing homelessness are unaware that such rights even exist. Others find that the system isn't equipped or willing to uphold.
They can spend hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to flush it down the toilet, but there's not a dime to help us. The shelters are untenable. The stress in a shelter I cannot endure. That's why I'm here. For lack of a better word, it's brutal, it's cruel, it's senseless, it's so unnecessary.
Root causes of the homelessness crisis, the truth about substance use. The explosion of homelessness in North Carolina is not accidental. It's the inevitable outcome of a volatile mix of economic pressure, government inaction, and deep-rooted systemic failure. One of the most visible and devastating drivers is the skyrocketing cost of housing. Since 2020, home prices have surged by an astonishing 47%. In the South, where North Carolina sits at the heart, rent prices have jumped another 28%, but wages, they've barely moved. That creates a brutal and unforgiving gap between income and even the most basic shelter. People are not just being priced out of homes, they're being pushed out of stability, dignity, and hope. But homelessness is rarely just about losing a house. It's also about the collapse of a safety net. Widespread issues like untreated mental illness, substance use disorders, domestic violence, and inadequate access to health care all contribute to the crisis. And the truth about substance use, if you think homelessness is just a problem for addicts, you've been deceived. It's often more of a consequence than a cause. Many individuals begin using drugs or alcohol as a form of escape. After they've lost their homes, after their sense of purpose has been shattered, after the streets become their daily reality. The trauma of living without stability, without safety, and without any sense of control drives many to numb themselves however they can. Yes, some enter homelessness already struggling with addiction. But for a significant portion, the substance use starts afterward, fueled by despair, isolation, and the brutal mental toll of being unhoused. However, even if drugs aren't what led someone to homelessness, once they're part of the equation, everything changes. Substance abuse can lock people into homelessness like a prison without bars. It hijacks judgment, sabotages job opportunities, and pushes support systems away. That's why the best choice is never to start. Stay away from addictive substances, because escaping addiction while homeless is like trying to swim with chains around your ankles. Prevention is the only real freedom. But when we reduce homelessness to just a drug problem, we miss the point entirely. It's not about blaming individuals, it's about understanding the systems that failed them. We must ask, why are we so quick to point fingers at symptoms, but so unwilling to confront the root disease? And with all of this on the table, decades of data, lived experiences, and societal damage, what has our government truly done to change the trajectory? The state of North Carolina has not turned a blind eye to the homelessness crisis. Following the devastation caused by recent hurricanes, state officials responded by building and acquiring 1,000 units of temporary housing. Financial resources were also directed toward repairing essential infrastructure in the hardest hit areas. These moves signal a growing awareness of the crisis, and in a world where governmental inertia is often the norm, such action deserves acknowledgement. But recognition is not the same as resolution. Despite these interventions, the number of unhoused individuals continues to climb, a sobering reality that reflects a larger national trend. The situation in North Carolina is not isolated. It mirrors broader patterns of what it means to be homeless in America today. Short-term shelter programs, emergency relief, and transitional housing are valuable, but they are not solutions to the systemic problems that fuel homelessness. These efforts treat symptoms, not causes. At the core, we're dealing with deeply rooted issues: a critical shortage of affordable housing, wages that have failed to keep pace with rising costs, untreated mental health conditions, and a frayed safety net that too often lets people slip through the cracks. The current strategies do little to address these structural problems. Many policies, although well-intentioned, are bogged down by bureaucratic inefficiencies, limited timelines, and inadequate funding. And when programs do make it off the ground, they often lack the scale or longevity required to make a lasting impact. Unless North Carolina and the nation as a whole commits to long-term systemic investments, the crisis will not only persist but worsen. Band-aid solutions may slow the bleeding, but they will not heal the wound. And if we fail to shift from reactive policies to proactive preventative strategies, we will find ourselves revisiting this conversation year after year as more individuals and families fall into the cycle of poverty and displacement. The question we must now confront is this: what kind of future is North Carolina building for its people? If current trends continue, the state may soon face a tipping point where the number of homeless outpaces the available support systems. Communities will strain under the pressure, social services will be overwhelmed, and public health concerns will intensify. The problem is no longer one of charity. It is one of infrastructure, policy, and political will. We need to stop asking what can be done to manage homelessness and start asking what can be done to end it. Because if being homeless in America has taught us anything, it's that temporary fixes never yield permanent change. Ending homelessness is not some idealistic fantasy. It's a matter of political will and public focus. The conversation around the homeless in America often circles the same tired talking points, but the real answers require bold, structural change. First and foremost, there must be a sweeping increase in investment toward permanent, affordable housing. But this is not just about putting up more buildings. It's about constructing communities, safe, stable, and respectful spaces where people can heal, rebuild, and thrive. That means working closely with nonprofit housing developers, offering long-term subsidies, and updating outdated zoning laws that currently block the creation of mixed-income neighborhoods. Yet housing alone is not enough. A person with a roof but no access to mental health care, no opportunity for employment, and no support for addiction recovery is still on the edge. Real solutions require wraparound services that treat the person, not just the problem. That includes accessible healthcare, job training programs, affordable childcare, and education pathways, all within reach of where people live. These are not luxuries, they are lifelines. Prevention, too, must be at the forefront. The cycle begins long before someone ends up on the street. We need robust rent assistance that keeps people in their homes before eviction becomes inevitable. We need legal representation for tenants, especially those facing predatory landlords or illegal evictions. And we need stronger safety nets, emergency shelters, rapid rehousing, and crisis response teams that act quickly when a family's stability begins to slip. These are investments, not expenses, and the return is a more just, functional, and compassionate society. If we're serious about ending the crisis of the homeless in America, we must stop treating it like a weather pattern that simply comes and goes. It's not unpredictable, it's preventable. But only if we commit to understanding the root causes, targeting the most impacted communities, and addressing this issue with long-term vision rather than short-term charity. Which leads us to the most urgent question. If we know what works, if the research is clear, and the models for success already exist, then what exactly is stopping us? What do you believe is the real reason we still haven't ended homelessness in this country? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, because real change begins with real conversations. While homelessness is a statewide problem, certain regions have borne the brunt more than others. Charlotte-Mecklenburg County is one of the epicenters. In 2023, nearly 1,916 individuals were homeless there, 17 per 10. 0 residents. This urban hub has become a case study in how housing market pressures and limited support systems combine to push people out of homes. Western parts of North Carolina, especially Asheville and surrounding mountain towns, were devastated by Hurricane Helene. Months later, many residents are still living in tents or makeshift shelters. These communities lack the infrastructure and funding needed for a swift recovery. It's a grim illustration of how climate disasters and economic vulnerability feed each other. These hotspots show us where urgent attention is needed. But they also reveal something deeper. that no community is immune. So the next question is, how can individuals protect themselves from becoming part of this growing population? In a volatile economy and an increasingly unpredictable world, none of us are entirely immune to the risk of homelessness. That may be an uncomfortable truth, but it's one we can't afford to ignore. The face of homelessness in America has changed. It's no longer just the chronically unhoused or those struggling with substance abuse or mental illness. It now includes families living paycheck to paycheck, seniors with fixed incomes that no longer stretch, and even full-time workers who simply can't afford rent. Personal financial planning is a first line of defense. Understanding basic financial literacy, budgeting, avoiding high-interest debt, saving for emergencies, and obtaining health or renter's insurance where feasible can make a significant difference. But even the best planning can fall short when systemic issues come into play. Skyrocketing housing costs, stagnant wages, and rising medical expenses. That's why being informed about local resources is essential. Programs offering housing assistance, food security, legal aid, or crisis counseling can serve as vital lifelines during moments of unexpected hardship. Equally crucial is social connection. Individuals who are engaged in their communities, whether through neighborhood associations, churches, cultural groups, or volunteer work, tend to have stronger safety nets. These human networks can provide emotional support, share resources, or even offer temporary shelter when systems fail. In the fight against homelessness in America, these informal networks are often the first and most responsive line of support. But prevention isn't just a personal responsibility, it's a collective one. We must ask ourselves, what kind of neighbors do we want to be? What kind of community do we want to build? These questions should not only prompt us to act with more compassion, but also to hold local and national leaders accountable for affordable housing, accessible health care, and economic justice. Because the truth is, the next person to fall through the cracks could be anyone, including us. Homelessness in North Carolina is not an isolated failure. It is a mirror held up to our society, a reflection of what we've chosen to value and what we've chosen to ignore. Numbers are rising, the shelters are full, the tents are spreading, but this is not inevitable. We can chart a different course. We can invest in solutions that go beyond emergency response. We can create systems that prevent people from falling through the cracks. And most importantly, we can humanize the issue. If this doesn't compel us to act, what will? The time, the wait is past. It's time to rebuild not just homes, but hope. It's time to end homelessness in North Carolina for good.